Hello, my friends. Welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads. This is a place where I talk about books and knitting sometimes. So, a quick report on knitting. I went to a fibre fair this past Sunday and I couldn't resist buying a skein of yarn. This is blue-faced Leicester and alpaca, and trust me, it feels great. My cat Frida is here. She's probably going to show up a little bit more. And then the last time that I was at the fibre fair, I got some Cotswold lamb wool. This is so beautiful to work with. I've done a whole bunch of swatches, and right now I'm knitting a pair of socks, 2 at a time from it. I don't have the project here, but I will pop in a photo. So that's what's going on with my knitting. Okay, on to the books. I've got all audiobooks to tell you about today, and they're all borrowed from the library. I do borrow print books as well. But today, it's all audio all the time. And I also want to talk about literary prizes because there's some big ones that have long lists announced. The Women's Prize for Fiction and the Carol Shields Prize, which is also for women and non-binary writers. And on the Carol Shields Prize long list, one of the titles is Wildlife by Amanda Leduc. And last year, that was one of my favorites. So I am so happy to see that on the list. I hope more people will be picking it up. And another book on that list is this one, Canon by Lee Lai. It's a graphic novel. And I was planning on reading it for March 31st, which is Trans Visibility Day. I'm going to read it sooner, and there's a waiting list at the library, so I need to have it done by March 23rd. I'll tell you about it next week. Okay, so on to the books that I finished, starting with a title that is on both the Women's Prize list and the Carol Shields Prize list. A Guardian and a Thief by Megha Majumdar. And the audiobook is read by Soneela Nankani and a full cast. There are periodic sections in this audiobook where it's a phone conversation, and for those they've used a multi-voice cast to do the different voices. It's really well done. Megha Majumdar is an Indian novelist who was born in Kolkata and now lives in the US. Her debut novel, A Burning, won several honors, including being longlisted for the National Book Award in the US. And now A Guardian and a Thief was also on the National Book Award shortlist. As I said, it's longlisted for the Carol Shields Prize and the Women's Prize for Fiction, and it was on lots of best books lists last year. So I feel like I finally got to it. If you haven't heard, it is set in a near future Kolkata where there's an extreme food shortage. And this is brought about by climate catastrophe. There's flooding, there's drought, extreme heat, severe storms. So that's going on. And the people that we're following are Ma and her 2-year-old daughter and Ma's elderly father. And they're going to be traveling to the US to join Ma's husband, who has a job there. And it's taken a lot of time and paperwork to get their visas in order to do this travel. So the time frame of the novel is just within 1 week from the time that they get their visas and the time that they're supposed to be getting on the plane. However, the first day, the first night actually, the visas get stolen, and the story switches back and forth between these three individuals who are trying to get to the US and the thief and his family and what's happening there. Well, I have to say that in the very early part of this audiobook, the desperation and the tense pace, it was almost too much for me. I thought, I don't know if I can take this. So number one, I speeded up the playback on the audiobook to a 1.5, which is faster than I normally listen to an audio, but sometimes that's what I have to do to match the pace of the story itself to how fast I'm listening to it. And once I got to the thief part and getting to know more about him, I kind of relaxed into the story, and I am so glad that I stuck with it because this is amazing. I really, really enjoyed this book, and it deserves all the praise that it's been getting. Yeah. Next, The Last of Earth by Deepa Anappara, and the audiobook is read by Rea Malhotra Mukhtyar. Deepa Anappara was born in Kerala, in the south of India, and I read her debut novel, Gin Patrol on the Purple Line, in 2020, in the early part of the COVID lockdown. And I was so grateful for the way that the author depicted people living with such uncertainty in that novel. And it really helped me cope with my own mental state at the start of the pandemic. So I was really looking forward to reading her new novel, The Last of Earth. Now this one is really different. It's historical fiction. It's set in Tibet in 1869. And at that time, Tibet was entirely closed to Europeans. And so, of course, Europeans kept trying to sneak in. If something's forbidden, you gotta do it, I guess. It's a story about colonialism and obsession and egomania. There are two storylines. So in one, you have this English cartographer who is wanting to map the start of a river, and he is disguised as a Buddhist monk, not very well disguised. And then in the other storyline, they do converge. In the other storyline, it's an English woman in her 50s, and she's of mixed race heritage. So she can pass better as not a white person. What I really love about this book is how the people who are centered in this novel are the guides and the servants, so the Indian people and the Tibetans a little bit. And it's got kind of a stately or majestic pace that allows time to describe and appreciate the magnificent landscape of Tibet. So even though it's an adventure travel story, don't expect it to have a fast pace. I found it totally immersive, and I enjoyed the 19th century elements that are included in the book, like the chapter heading. So for example, chapter 1, Misfortune on the Mountain Pass, Unexpected Visitors, The Captain's Ambitions, Last Night at the Border. Yeah, so I've got a third novel by a South Asian author, and this one is contemporary. It's Borderless by Namrata Poddar. The audiobook is read by Deepti Gupta. Now, this author was born in Kolkata, but her heritage, her roots are in Marwari culture of the Thar Desert. And many of the characters in this book also have that similar heritage. It's interconnected short stories, and they portray across a spectrum of the South Asian diaspora, the disillusionment of following one's dreams, sometimes what you think you wanted when you get it turns out to be not as satisfying. There's all kinds of work. This is really focused on the kinds of work that people do. Call center agents, housemaids, people working in the entertainment industry, the hospitality industry. There are tourists, academics, fashion designers. So this is another very much character-based near novel. Each story is more like a scene. It doesn't come together as a typical novel, but if you like fragmentary storytelling, give this one a try, and this one is in Hoopla. So I'm returning to the subject of literary prizes now, because this next author has won some prestigious awards, including the $175,000 Wyndham Campbell Prize that's based at Yale University in the US. The audiobook that I listened to is Storm Pegs by Jen Hadfield, and it's read by the author. This book, by the way, was recommended to me by one of my subscribers, Marjorie Apple. Well, thank you, Marjorie. I really enjoyed this. It's a memoir, and Jen Hadfield is a poet and visual artist. She has a Canadian mother and a British father. She grew up in Cheshire and spent time living on Canada's west coast. And then she moved to Shetland in her 20s. And as far as I know, she's been living there ever since. If you love language, then memoirs by poets are such a delight. So here are some quotes. Is it not strange that we see other places as remote? Everywhere is the center for someone, human or otherwise. She also quotes Mike Collins, the American astronaut who flew the Apollo 11 mission to the moon. He wasn't one of them who stepped onto the moon. He stayed in the ship. But what he talked about was how seeing Earth from space made dealing with minor irritations entirely different. He just saw things differently, and he recommended sending world leaders into space so that they could see international conflicts in their galactic context, which actually reminded me of Samantha Harvey's book, Orbital. I really got that feeling from that book as well, from that novel. As I said, Storm Pegs is very much about language, and each chapter actually starts with a bit of Shetland vocabulary. And I thought that Shetland vocabulary would be a variation of Scots, if not exactly the same. I learned differently. A lot of people think that the folk there speak a sort of watered down Scots with a Gaelic inflection, but Gaelic has never been spoken there, and Shetland is as entangled with the old Norn language as it is with Scots. So then I had to look up what Norn is. It's a Northern Germanic language. Orkney and Shetland actually were considered part of Norway until the mid-15th century. Then they were pledged to Scotland at that time. So Norn was gradually replaced by Scots. So the Shetland dialect opens each chapter. There's a word or several words and their meaning, and then that's tied into what she's talking about in that particular chapter. She talks about the landscape. She talks about the plants. Now, one of the plants, Rhodiola rosea, is a plant that I am familiar with. And she says, you can tell that something is important to a culture when it has a lot of vernacular names. Rhodiola rosea is also called roseroot. In Norway, it has over 50 different names. Some of them are rock king, rock buzz, mountain wreath, butterskirt, sister's grass, staircase man, mountain squeak. It's a plant that can be used as a mild stimulant. It has other medicinal uses, I think. My sister-in-law grows it. I also learned about noctilucent clouds, which are also called night shining clouds. And these are clouds that are so high up in the atmosphere that the ice crystals reflect light that's on the other side of the world, the sunlight that you can't see except in its reflection in these clouds. And the reason why these clouds are so rare is because it's rare to have dust that high up in the atmosphere, and you need dust to form clouds. This is what she's got to say about profanity. Is a swear an inadequacy of language, the moment words fail us? Or is it the purest form of language we have? And here's a passage about bees. Tucked underneath the flowers, damp bees are clinging, seized up like little engine blocks that have run out of oil. There's so much culture happening in Shetland. Oh, that's another thing I learned. It's not the Shetlands. The islands are called Shetland, period. Anyway, she writes about listening to live folk music. Tears begin to sheet silently down my cheeks. What subtle surgical work is it of halftones and harmony and harmonics that undoes the muscles in my face and neck and chest and opens the floodgates? That's happened to me. I know exactly what she's talking about. Some kind of magic in music. And then there's a quote from Gertrude Stein. Anybody is as their land and air is. And I think this encapsulates what this whole memoir is about, that language and landscape are so entangled, and so are we as part of that. This is a beautiful, beautiful memoir. Highly recommend. Now, another thing that Hadfield talks about is a tie to the next audiobook. So she says, I think if I had a demon, like the creaturely soul companion in Philip Pullman's Northern Lights trilogy, it would be a limpet. So next I'm going to tell you about The Rose Field, which is the third book in the Book of Dust trilogy by Philip Pullman. I listened to the audiobook read by Michael Sheen. So Philip Pullman is the author of 6 books that are in 2 trilogies that are all kind of one long story. The first trilogy, his Dark Materials, which is also called The Golden Compass in North America, is much more of a fantasy adventure. And the second trilogy is the Book of Dust, La Belle Sauvage, The Secret Commonwealth, and then this final book, The Rose Field. The one book, The Rose Field, is over 600 pages. So the audiobook is more than 22 hours long. I would say that they are not standalones. You pretty much need to have the whole series for it to make sense. In The Rose Field, Lyra is now 20 years old, and she's looking for her demon Pan. Pan is searching for Lyra's imagination. It's very philosophical. I found it quite preachy. And I read this with my YA book group, and there was not a lot of good things to say about it. So not a strong recommendation at all. I think you really have to be a big fan of the whole series to make this worthwhile, especially because it's so long. If it wasn't in audiobook and such a good narrator, Michael Sheen is great, I don't think I would have got through it. As I mentioned, the first trilogy is more of a fantasy adventure. It's set on an alternate Earth. While this one is more tied to current social political events, and especially science versus religion and authoritarianism. So more a book of ideas. In the audiobook, there's a long interview at the end. It's maybe an hour long between Martin Sheen and Philip Pullman, and I found that really interesting. So one more thing I want to talk about are the readathons going on Booktube right now, like Dewithon. So this is reading Welsh literature or books set in Wales or related to Welsh mythology. And The Rose Field almost qualifies, I think. Philip Pullman is English, but he's lived in Wales for a long time, and the narrator of the audiobook is Welsh. But if you want some Dewithon recommendations, I suggest following Heather of Too Many Heathers. I will link her channel down below. And even though The Rose Field is long, it's over 600 pages, it's not long enough for March of the Mammoths. So that readathon is for something that's over 800 pages. But I would like to find one book that would combine several readathons. So Middle Grade March, so a book for middle grade readers, March Mystery Madness, so a mystery, and Dewithon, or maybe Irish, for the Irish readathon. So if you've got suggestions for a middle grade mystery by a Welsh author or an Irish author, please let me know in the comments. And that's all I've got for you today. So thank you so much for watching, and I really appreciate hearing from you. So do say hello in the comments and tell me if you are participating in any of these wonderful Booktube readathon events, or just say hi, I watched. That's always good to know too. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.